Everyone heard her scream before they even saw her face. "Get out of that cabin right now before I call the cops and have you thrown in jail!" The words cracked through the stillness of the mountain air like glass shattering on concrete. I froze on the front porch, suitcase still in my hand, my boots barely touching the wooden step. And in that single moment, I realized this wasn't just an argument. It was a public accusation, one loud enough to draw every curious neighbor out of hiding. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was who was waiting inside that cabin. The woman charging at me looked like she had been plucked straight out of every nightmare story told about HOA presidents. Mid-40s, hair so stiff with hairspray it didn't even twitch in the mountain breeze, and that white button-down shirt that practically shouted, "I was born to file complaints." Her clipboard was clutched in her hand like a weapon, and her eyes burned with the kind of fury that only comes when someone thinks they've already won. Behind me, in the car, I heard movement. My daughter Sophia had been asleep, finally resting after weeks of nightmares. I had come home early from my business trip in Denver for her. For the first time in months, I thought I could give her peace. I thought I could surprise her with an extra day at the family cabin, the place her great-grandfather built, the place where she always felt safe. But safe wasn't what we got. "Arrest him!" The woman barked into her phone as her thumb jabbed at the 911 keypad. She raised her chin high, defiance dripping from her every move. "He's an intruder! Dangerous! Armed with God knows what!" Her words were sharp, deliberate, designed for the neighbors now peeking from behind curtains and doorways. She wasn't just calling the cops. She was staging a performance. I tried to steady my breath. Iraq had taught me patience under fire, and in some strange way the HOA president's venom carried the same kind of pressure. Only this time the battlefield wasn't a desert. It was my family's porch. "Ma'am," I said, voice low, calm, every word measured. "There's been a mistake. This cabin has been in my family for 30 years. My grandfather built it. I inherited it when he passed 6 months ago. I have the deed. I have the taxes. This is our home." But she didn't hear me. Or maybe she refused to. Sophia's voice broke through then, small, tired, but cutting through all of it like a knife. "Daddy," she whispered as she stepped out of the car, teddy bear still clutched in her tiny hands. "Why is the mean lady yelling at us? Why does she want to take Grandpa's house?" Her question silenced the yard. Neighbors shifted. Even the birds seemed to stop. The HOA president, her name tag gleamed Veronica Pimpton, froze for just a fraction of a second, eyes darting to the little girl now holding my hand. And instead of softening, instead of showing the slightest shred of decency, she sneered. "Little girl," Veronica said, voice dripping condescension, "you need to stop clutching that stuffed animal and creating an unprofessional atmosphere. This is a business transaction, not a daycare." I felt Sophia's small hand squeeze mine tighter. She was 8. Her mother's teddy bear was the only piece of comfort she still carried since the accident. And this woman had the audacity to dismiss her grief like it was clutter in the wrong yard. That was when my stomach turned cold. This wasn't just a petty HOA president. This was someone dangerous. And then her final act. She lifted her phone higher, voice booming across the street for all to hear. "Yes, operator, I need immediate police assistance. We have a military veteran here, unstable with a child in danger. He refuses to vacate property owned by the HOA. Please hurry. I fear for everyone's safety." Every word was a lie. A rehearsed one, too. Sophia tugged on my arm. Her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, blinked up at me. "Daddy," she whispered. "Mommy always said liars are just scared of something." I knelt down, looked her in the eyes, forced a steady smile I didn't feel. "That's right, sweetheart. She's scared. But we're not." My heart was hammering, my mind racing through the nightmare scenarios. Child Protective Services, court hearings, legal battles we couldn't afford. And then, sirens. A patrol car screeched to a halt at the end of the driveway. Tires crunched gravel. A young officer stepped out, hand brushing the edge of her holster. Veronica's eyes lit up with triumph. She clutched her clipboard like a shield and turned her volume up another notch. "Thank God you're here, officer. This man is trespassing. He's dangerous. He's unstable." Her performance was flawless, dripping with fake fear. Neighbors leaned closer. A man across the street raised a camera, live streaming every second. My daughter pressed her teddy against her chest, whispering, "Daddy, the mean lady is still lying." And then, the sound that changed everything. The cabin. Door behind me creaked open. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed across the wooden porch. The kind of steps that made the entire neighborhood stop and listen. And then, a deep voice boomed out, commanding silence. "Who just called my family an intruder?" The officer froze mid-step. Veronica's smug smile cracked, and for the first time since she arrived, the HOA president's face drained of color. Because the man stepping into the Colorado sunlight wasn't just any man. It was the last person she ever expected to see, and the one person she should have feared all along. Everyone knew that voice, even before they saw his face. It wasn't just deep. It carried a weight, the kind of weight that makes people straighten their backs without realizing why. And when the cabin door swung wide, the late afternoon sunlight fell across a tall, silver-haired man whose presence alone shifted the entire atmosphere. Judge Theodore Teddy Blackstone. The neighborhood went silent. Birds scattered from trees. Veronica Pimpton, who had been shrieking like a queen on her throne just moments ago, suddenly looked like a child caught scribbling on the walls. Her face drained to paper white, clipboard trembling in her hand. Did I hear someone say, "My granddaughter was traumatized"? The judge's voice rolled across the porch, heavy and deliberate. Sophia let go of my hand with a gasp of joy. "Grandpa Judge!" she squealed, running into his arms. He bent, scooping her up with a gentleness that clashed against the authority he projected a moment earlier. His stern face melted into the warm smile of a grandfather, eyes soft as he kissed her hair. "There's my brave girl," he whispered, though his voice carried enough for every neighbor to hear. "No one will ever take Grandpa's house away from you, not while I'm here." The officer, Rita Gonzalez, stiffened like a soldier saluting a commander. She hadn't expected to be walking into a dispute involving one of the most respected judges in Colorado. Even Detective Sarah Chen, who had just stepped out of her car in a tailored suit, paused mid-stride, recognition flashing in her eyes. "But, Veronica..." She stumbled back. Her lips trembled before snapping back into a tight line, her performance faltering. For once, words failed her. Judge Blackstone rose to his full height, his silver hair catching the fading light. He looked around slowly, gaze heavy, deliberate, making sure every pair of eyes in that crowd saw who he was and what he stood for. His presence was a reminder of law, of order, of consequences. "Officer," he said firmly, "this property belongs to my son, Ethan Rodriguez. It was built by my father-in-law with his own hands, passed down through blood not stolen by false fees. I've been monitoring this HOA's irregularities for months, and I'll not see my granddaughter terrorized on her own porch." The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their heads, guilty for not speaking up sooner. Others leaned forward, eager to watch history unfold in their own cul-de-sac. Veronica tried to find her voice. Your Honor," she stammered, clutching her clipboard tighter. "There's been a misunderstanding. The HOA has documentation." "Documentation?" Judge Blackstone's eyebrows arched like steel. His voice sharpened. "Or fabrications?" That question alone cut through her like a blade. Sophia, safe in her grandfather's arms, turned her head and whispered with a kind of childlike bluntness that stripped everything down to truth. "Grandpa Judge, the mean lady lied about Daddy. She said I wasn't safe, but Mommy said liars are scared people." The judge kissed her forehead, but when he lifted his eyes back to Veronica, they hardened into something colder, sharper. It was then that the quiet broke. From across the street, the man with the camera, Jake Morrison, raised his voice for the first time. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to his live stream audience, his words carrying across the yard, "what you're seeing is a decorated veteran and his daughter being harassed on their family property by an HOA president, making false claims. This is what abuse of power looks like. The live stream count was already climbing, hundreds of viewers, then thousands. And Veronica knew it. Her mask cracked. "Bradley!" she suddenly hissed, spinning toward a man at the edge of the crowd who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Bring me the documents, now!" The man flinched at her command. He clutched a manila folder to his chest, hands shaking, face pale with guilt. "Veronica." His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "I can't do this anymore. What we've been doing to these families, it isn't right." His eyes flicked toward Detective Chen. "I have records, all of them. I'm done lying," the crowd gasped. And Veronica's face twisted into something darker, uglier. "You coward!" she spat, venom dripping from every syllable. "Do you know what happens to people who cross me? To their families, their businesses?" Her voice dropped lower, sharper, a blade behind the lips. "You know what I can do?" Sophia buried her face in her grandfather's shoulder, whispering, "Daddy, the mean lady is getting scarier." And I felt it too. That surge of fury every parent knows. The instinct to shield your child from someone who no longer sees humanity in others. But before I could speak, Judge Blackstone stepped forward, placing Sophia gently back into my arms. His voice deepened, carrying the weight of 3 decades on the bench. "Mrs. Pimpton," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "You've been caught in lies, exposed in front of your neighbors, and now accused by your own partner. And yet, you threaten him in front of law enforcement?" Detective Chen, seizing the moment, stepped closer, flashing her badge. "Detective Sarah Chen, Denver PD. I've been investigating irregularities in property transfers under this HOA. This address flagged multiple complaints." She looked Veronica dead in the eyes. "And now, we have a witness." Veronica's chest rose and fell, her fury mixing with panic. Her once flawless performance was unraveling faster than she could stitch it back together. She glanced at the police officer, at the detective, at the neighbors, at the live stream camera that was broadcasting her collapse to the world, and then, with a desperation that rattled every bone in my body, she snapped. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice shaking but dangerous. "You have no idea how far this goes. You have no idea who you're really up against." The neighborhood froze. A storm was coming, and she had just pulled back the curtain. But what none of us knew yet was that the judge wasn't just standing there to defend his family. He'd been waiting for this moment. He'd been preparing for months, and in his hand, tucked neatly inside a worn manila envelope, was evidence that would rip the mask off everything Veronica thought she controlled. What he revealed next would turn a neighborhood dispute into a war. Everyone thought the confrontation had already reached its peak. A judge on the porch, a detective flashing her badge, a live stream spreading the truth to thousands. But what none of us realized, what Veronica never expected, was that Judge Blackstone had been waiting for this very moment. He held the envelope like a loaded weapon. And when he spoke, his words didn't just carry, they struck. "Detective Chen," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel. "I appreciate your diligence. But I should tell you, I've been conducting my own inquiry into the Pine Ridge HOA for months. This isn't just a property dispute. This is organized exploitation." The crowd rustled, Whispers spread like sparks in dry grass. Even officer. Gonzalez leaned closer, her skepticism giving way to something else. Unease. Veronica's eyes darted wildly, scanning for an escape route. "Your Honor," she said quickly, "this is slander. The HOA operates fully within legal boundaries. Any suggestion otherwise?" "Silence!" The judge cut her off, his voice like thunder. "I was offered a bribe, to look the other way, to sign off on fraudulent property transfers. That bribe came from you." The color drained from her face. For the first time, her lips didn't move. "Imagine my surprise," Blackstone continued, "when I discovered you weren't just targeting random residents. You were targeting military families, widows, grieving children, families like mine." His hand tightened on the envelope. "I warned you once. You didn't listen." The live stream audience erupted with comments, their words flashing across. Jake Morrison's screen. HOA corruption exposed. She's done. Finally, justice. But the silence in the yard was deafening. Every neighbor, every onlooker was realizing they had been living under the shadow of something much darker than lawn fines and mailbox regulations. And then Bradley Hutchinson, the trembling man clutching the folder, finally broke. "She knew," he said, his voice ragged with guilt. "She knew Ethan was your son. She knew Sophia was your granddaughter. She tried to forge papers anyway. She told me we could bleed families dry, force them to sell, flip the homes, pocket the profit." His hand shook violently as he extended the folder toward Detective Chen. "I have records, names, transfers. It's all here." Veronica turned on him like a viper. "You spineless coward," she hissed. "Do you think you can save yourself? You know what happens when people betray me. You know what I can do to you, to your family." The words hung in the air like poison. I felt Sophia press her face against my chest, her teddy bear clutched tight. She whispered, "Daddy, she's scary." And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about rules or property. This was about fear. Fear she'd been planting in every neighbor, every victim for years, but not anymore. Judge Blackstone opened the envelope. From inside, he pulled a small digital recorder. He held it up for all to see. "This," he said, "contains hours of conversations recorded by concerned citizens. Conversations where you, Mrs. Pimpton, outline strategies for preying on the vulnerable. Elderly residents, single parents, grieving families, and yes, my father-in-law, who you waited to grow too weak to fight back." The gasp that rippled through the crowd wasn't just shock, it was rage. Even neighbors who had stayed silent, for years now, muttered angrily, their eyes burning holes through Veronica's brittle mask. Detective Chen stepped forward, her expression sharpened by vindication. "Judge, may I?" He handed her the recorder. She pressed play, and suddenly Veronica's own voice spilled across the yard, tinny but unmistakable. Calm, cold, calculating. "The key is timing. Wait until they're overwhelmed. Medical bills, funeral costs, deployment stress. That's when they're weakest. That's when they'll sign anything. Families in pain don't fight back." The neighbors gasped again, some covering their mouths, others glaring at her in disgust. Bradley buried his face in his hands. "She told me it was about helping them," he muttered. "She said we were protecting them from being taken advantage of." "I didn't know." "Oh, you knew," the judge's voice cut through. "You just lacked the courage to stop it. Until now." But the most devastating blow came not from the judge, not from the detective, not even from the recordings. It came from a small, trembling voice. "Daddy," Sophia whispered, tugging my sleeve so everyone could hear her. "If the mean lady takes our house, where will we put Mommy's pictures?" The silence that followed was crushing. Every eye turned to her, and in her innocence, she revealed the real cost of this crime. Not just property, not just money, but memory, family, love. Veronica tried to recover, her words frantic, desperate. "This is circumstantial, inadmissible." I demand my attorney. But nobody was listening. Not when Mildred Kowalski, my grandfather's oldest friend, finally stepped out from her porch. 70-something, silver hair pinned neatly, eyes sharper than a hawk. She held up her own device, an old-fashioned flip phone. I've been recording her too, she said proudly. Every backyard conversation, every threat, every boast, 6 months of it. The judge's jaw tightened. Detective Chen's eyes widened. Even Special Agent Walsh, who had just stepped from a black SUV at the curb, froze mid-step. Because Mildred's voice wasn't just offering help. She was offering proof. 3 weeks ago, Mildred continued, her voice steady, she bragged about causing stress-related heart attacks in 2 elderly residents in neighboring towns. She laughed about it. The yard erupted into chaos. Gasps, cries. Even Jake, behind his camera, went silent. For a live streamer who thrived on commentary, that silence meant more than words ever could. Veronica staggered backward, her mask shattering completely. Her carefully crafted facade of authority and order lay in ruins, replaced by the raw panic of someone cornered. Special Agent Walsh flashed her badge, her voice carrying authority that cut through the storm. Rebecca Walsh, FBI. Mrs. Pimpton, based on multiple witness statements, audio recordings, and live surveillance evidence, you are now under federal investigation for fraud, racketeering, elder abuse, and potentially homicide. The crowd buzzed with disbelief. The word homicide hit like a hammer. But Veronica wasn't finished. Her eyes darted, wild, calculating. She still had cards left to play. She lifted her phone, her fingers trembling but quick, dialing a number she'd memorized. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You think you've won? You think this ends here? You have no idea who I work for. Her voice rose, sharper, desperate. We have a problem in Pine Ridge. Immediate extraction. The judge is here. The FBI is here. Send backup now. The call connected. The neighborhood froze, and in that instant I realized something chilling. Veronica Pimpton wasn't acting alone, and the person on the other end of that phone was about to turn our small-town nightmare into something far bigger than any of us were prepared for. The phone call changed everything. Until that moment, it had been one corrupt HOA president against a family, a judge, and a growing crowd of witnesses. But the second Veronica hissed into her phone, immediate extraction, the tone shifted. This wasn't just neighborhood corruption anymore, it was a network, a machine, and she had just summoned it. The silence that followed was razor-sharp, broken only by the sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires. Black SUVs turned the corner, rolling into the neighborhood like predators circling prey. Doors slammed. Men and women in dark jackets stepped out, their gold FBI lettering catching the light. The crowd gasped, some retreating to their porches, others frozen in place. Special Agent Rebecca Walsh stepped forward, her auburn hair tied back, her voice carrying the calm weight of federal authority. Federal Bureau of Investigation, she announced, badge raised. We've been monitoring a multi-state property fraud operation. Pine Ridge is one of the hubs. Every neighbor leaned closer. Cameras rose higher. Jake Morrison whispered into his live stream, "Ladies and gentlemen, this just went federal." But instead of cowering, instead of folding under the weight of a federal badge, Veronica's expression twisted into something dangerous. For a moment, she looked less like a suburban HOA president and more like a cornered animal, teeth bared. "You don't understand," she spat, stepping closer to Sophia and me. Her voice cracked with fury. "If anyone tries to arrest me, this child loses her home forever. I have lawyers who can tie this up for years. By the time it's over, her memories will be dust. You'll all see what it means to cross me." Sophia pressed her face into my chest, trembling. My arms tightened around her, every protective instinct, screaming. But before I could react, she surprised everyone. She lifted her head, her small voice carrying farther than anyone expected. "You can't take our house," she said firmly, clutching her teddy bear. "My great-grandpa promised it would always be mine, and promises to little girls are the most important kind." Her words cut through the chaos like sunlight breaking. A storm. Even the FBI agents hesitated watching her. And then, with deliberate care, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded letter, creases worn from nights of being read and reread. "He wrote me this," she said, her voice unwavering, "before he went to heaven." The yard went still as she opened the letter with trembling fingers and began to read aloud. "My dearest Sophia, by the time you read this letter, I'll be watching over you from heaven. But know this house will always be yours. Your daddy is the bravest man I know, and Grandpa Judge will always protect our family. Remember, houses are wood and stone, but homes are made of love and memories. Nobody can take away love. Nobody can take away memories. Her voice wavered, but she finished, her big brown eyes rising to meet Veronica's. "Did anyone ever love you that much?" The question landed like a hammer. For a heartbeat, Veronica's face flickered. Something human, something broken, but it vanished as quickly as it came, swallowed by rage. "That's very touching," she snarled, her mask snapping back on. "But sentimental letters don't override legal documents. I have proof your grandfather owed thousands. This property is ours." Special Agent Walsh stepped forward, her tone even but edged with warning. "Mrs. Pimpton, step away from the child. What you're doing is adding federal kidnapping charges to a long list of crimes. Fraud, racketeering, elder abuse, conspiracy. You're already in deep enough. Don't dig further." But Veronica wasn't listening. Her eyes darted wildly, scanning the growing crowd, the cameras, the agents closing in. She looked like a drowning woman thrashing against the tide. "You think you're in control?" she hissed. "You have no idea how far this goes. I lost everything, my house, my law practice, my reputation. And do you know what I learned?" Her voice cracked into something shrill, manic. "When you've lost everything, you take what you need to survive." Her words rang hollow, excuses disguised as confessions. Sophia, with that impossible bravery only children seem to find, stepped forward instead of back. "My mommy died. My great-grandpa went to heaven. We lost everything, too. But we didn't hurt other families. Daddy says you can choose to be sad or you can choose to be mean." Her voice didn't shake. "You chose to be mean. The simplicity of it silenced the yard. Even hardened agents glanced at each other, visibly struck. Sometimes the sharpest truth comes from the smallest voice. Judge Blackstone stepped closer, his eyes cold steel. "I've spent my career listening to criminals justify their actions. But what you've been doing isn't survival, it's predation. You've been feeding on grief, exploiting pain. And it ends now." Veronica's hand shook as she clutched her phone tighter. She hit another number, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You think you've cornered me? You have no idea who I answer to. This doesn't stop here." Her words sent a ripple of unease through everyone. Even Special Agent Walsh's eyes narrowed, her instincts sparking, and then, like a thunderclap, Mildred Kowalski's front door slammed. The elderly woman marched across her lawn, her cardigan flapping, her stride more purposeful than anyone had ever seen. She carried something in her hand, an old flip phone, scratched and worn. "Veronica Pimpton," she barked, her voice sharp as a gavel. "You stop this nonsense right now. I've been listening to you threaten this family for an hour, and I've had enough. It's time everyone hears what I've been keeping." Veronica's face drained, her bravado faltering. "Mildred, go back inside. This doesn't concern you." But Mildred's smile was deadly. She lifted the phone like it was a smoking gun. "This little phone has been recording every conversation you've had in your backyard for the past 6 months, including the one where you bragged about causing stress that killed 2 elderly residents. including the one where you agreed to clear this entire neighborhood for a casino project in exchange for $1 million kickback. The crowd gasped. Agents stiffened. Even the live stream chat exploded, Jake's camera catching every second of Veronica's unraveling. For the first time, Veronica looked truly cornered. Not furious, not smug, just broken. But the danger wasn't over. Because as Mildred's words rippled across the yard, Veronica's phone, still clutched in her trembling hand, lit up. A name flashed across the screen, and when she answered, her voice shaking now, every agent leaned forward to hear. "Yes," she whispered. "They know. They all know. Send them now." The line crackled, and on the other end, a voice responded, with chilling calm. "Hold tight. We're coming." The neighborhood, once just the stage of a petty property dispute, was now the epicenter of something much bigger, and whatever was coming was already on its way. The neighborhood held its breath. Every eye was locked on Veronica's phone, still glowing in her trembling hand. Whoever she had just called wasn't bluff. The calm voice on the other end had carried a confidence that chilled the air. "Hold tight. We're coming for her, coming for us." Special Agent Walsh snapped her fingers at her team. "Secure the perimeter, nobody in or out." Agents moved fast, spreading down the street, radios crackling. Their presence was sharp, professional. But even then, I saw the flicker of unease in Walsh's eyes. She knew this wasn't just about fraud anymore. Something bigger was in play. Veronica, however, straightened, a twisted smirk creeping across her pale face. "You think you're in control?" she sneered, her voice regaining some venom. "You have no idea who I answer to. You're nothing compared to them." Her words rippled like poison through the crowd. Neighbors who had once thought of her as just a loud HOA president now looked at her with fear. What kind of woman in a pressed white shirt and pearl earrings had the power to summon backup like this? Judge Blackstone didn't flinch. He stood firm, his hand resting protectively on Sophia's shoulder. "Mrs. Pimpton, you've underestimated this community for too long. We will not be intimidated by shadows." His voice carried, steady and resonant. Not anymore. But even as he spoke, headlights cut through the dusk. Two black sedans rolled slowly up the street, engines low, deliberate like wolves stalking prey. They weren't marked government cars, no decals, no plates anyone recognized, just tinted windows and the kind of presence that made the FBI agents tense instantly. Neighbors stepped back onto their porches. Some closed their doors entirely, not wanting to be part of what was unfolding. But too many stayed, transfixed, phones out, live streams climbing into the tens of thousands. The sedan stopped. Doors opened in unison. 3 men stepped out, dark suits, sunglasses despite the fading light. Their movements rehearsed, efficient, and the one in the center smiled. Not a warm smile, a predator's smile. "Well," he said, voice smooth, almost charming, "it looks like we've arrived just in time." Special Agent Walsh raised her badge. "FBI, identify yourselves." The man didn't even glance at it. Instead, he looked directly at Veronica, who now seemed less like a trapped animal and more like a queen awaiting her knights. "You called," he said. "We came." Detective Chen stiffened. "These men aren't bureau." Her hand twitched, near her weapon. "Who are you?" The man finally looked at her, his smile never wavering. "Problem solvers, contractors, call us what you like. We handle situations that get messy." The words hung heavy in the evening air. Sophia's grip on my arm tightened. Her small voice whispered, "Daddy, are those the bad men Mommy warned about?" I swallowed hard, keeping my own fear buried. "Stay behind me, sweetheart." Veronica stepped forward now, her false confidence restored, feeding on their presence. You see? She hissed to the judge, to me, to everyone watching. You thought you could humiliate me, expose me. But I am not alone. There are people, powerful people, who profit when weak families crumble, and they take care of their own. Special Agent Walsh barked orders. Secure her! Now! 2 agents moved on Veronica, but the suited men stepped in with alarming precision, blocking their path without drawing weapons, yet radiating the kind of force that said they didn't need to, the crowd gasped. The live stream chat exploded. Jake Morrison whispered hoarsely into his mic, "This isn't just HOA corruption. We're looking at something organized, criminal enterprise level." And then, everything shifted again. Because Mildred Kowalski, the 70-year-old neighbor who had already changed the game with her recordings, stepped forward. Her flip phone was still in her hand, her jaw tight. "I know who you are," she said, her voice steady. "I've heard Veronica talk about you. You're the ones from the casino project, the ones paying her to clear out this neighborhood." The lead man's smile faltered for just a split second. His eyes narrowed at her. "You've been listening too much, Grandma." But Mildred didn't flinch. "I've lived through wars, recessions, and every con artist who thought they could bully decent people. You don't scare me." That's when Veronica snapped, her composure breaking under the weight of exposure. "Enough!" she screamed, voice shrill. "This neighborhood doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us, and we will bleed every last penny from it." Her words echoed, desperate and manic. The neighbors recoiled, some in horror, others in shame for not speaking sooner. Judge Blackstone's voice cut through the chaos. "Mrs. Pimpton, you've confessed enough to bury yourself and your friends for decades. Walk away now before this spirals further." But Veronica only laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "You think you've won? This is only the beginning." Before anyone could respond, the lead-suited man lifted his wrist to his mouth, speaking into a tiny earpiece. Phase 2. Move in. From down the street, more headlights flared, engines roared. Sophia buried her face in my chest again. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Are they here to take our house?" I held her tighter, my jaw clenched. "No, sweetheart," I said, though my heart pounded. "Not while I'm here. Not while Grandpa Judge is here." But the truth was, I didn't know if even that would be enough. Special Agent Walsh barked orders into her radio. Units, code red, back up now." The neighborhood, once the stage of petty HOA disputes, was now bracing for something much darker. A clash between federal law and a shadow network that had been hiding behind manicured lawns and property codes. And as the next wave of black SUVs screeched to a halt, doors flying open, one thing became terrifyingly clear. We weren't just fighting for a cabin anymore. We were fighting for the soul of our entire community, and the people who had just arrived weren't here to lose. The roar of engines swallowed the street. More SUVs screeched to a halt, their doors flying open like a coordinated strike. Men in dark suits spilled out, each moving with the precision of soldiers, but the arrogance of men who thought the law didn't touch them. Neighbors scattered onto porches. Curtains snapped shut, but the cameras never stopped rolling. Phones stayed pointed. The live stream counter soared into the tens of thousands, and there, standing between my daughter and this storm, was Judge Theodore Blackstone. His presence alone was a shield, but even I knew shields crack under enough fire. Special Agent Walsh drew her weapon, her voice sharp, commanding. "Federal agents, stand down! This is a crime scene!" The suited men didn't flinch. They didn't even glance at her badge. The leader, the same one who had smiled like a predator, stepped forward, calm as stone. "You're outnumbered, Agent, outplayed. You want this to go quietly? Walk away. Nobody has to know what you saw here." But Walsh didn't move. Her stance was rigid, her gun steady. "I'm not here to walk away. I'm here to shut you down. The tension was unbearable, like the crackle before lightning strikes. My arms tightened around Sophia, who buried her face against me, whispering, "Daddy, why aren't they scared of the police?" Because these men weren't afraid of anyone. Not yet. Veronica, feeding on their presence, straightened like a queen retaking her throne. "Do you see now?" she barked at us, at the neighbors, at the live stream camera. "I don't answer to this community. I answer to power, real power. You thought you could embarrass me with your little recordings, your child's letter, your judge's name. Pathetic." She turned to Agent Walsh, sneering. "Even the FBI isn't enough. My people reach higher than you could imagine." For the first time, a ripple of unease spread through the crowd. What if she wasn't bluffing? But Judge Blackstone's voice cut through the fear like a gavel striking wood. "Power that hides in shadows," he thundered, "isn't power, it's corruption, and corruption always falls." The words landed, heavy and absolute. Even the suited men faltered, the smallest twitch in their carefully constructed facade. Then, like a match striking gasoline, chaos ignited. One of the men lunged toward Veronica, pulling her behind him like cargo. FBI agents raised weapons. Shouts filled the street. The neighbors screamed, ducking, dragging children inside. And through it all, I shielded Sophia, my heart hammering like artillery fire in my chest. Detective Chen dove toward Bradley Hutchinson, grabbing the folder clutched in his shaking hands. "Get this safe!" she yelled, shoving it toward Agent Walsh. Inside were names, transfers, proof of everything, proof they'd kill to keep hidden. Veronica's voice shrieked from behind her protectors. "Do you see now? Do you understand who you're dealing with? I told you this is only the beginning." But even in the chaos, something pierced through. A voice, small but unshaken. "Sophia." She clutched her teddy bear tight, lifted her head, and shouted into the storm. "You're all bullies!" Her voice rang high, clear, defiant. "And bullies always lose when good people stand together." The street froze. The agents, the neighbors, even the suited men turned toward her, stunned by the raw courage of an eye. 8-year-old Judge Blackstone stepped forward then, towering, his voice rumbling like thunder. "You heard her? This ends now." Special Agent Walsh seized the moment, snapping her radio to life. "All units, move in." From every direction, sirens wailed. Police cruisers, state patrol cars, even unmarked government vehicles swarmed into the neighborhood. Lights flashed red and blue across every window. The once quiet cul-de-sac transformed into the stage of a war. The suited men stiffened, their confidence cracked. For the first time, they weren't the predators. They were prey, but predators. "Don't surrender easily." Their leader leaned toward Veronica, whispering something sharp in her ear. She nodded, her smirk returning even in handcuffs. And then, with terrifying calm, he raised his voice for everyone to hear. "You think this is the end?" His smile was cold, cruel. "You've only clipped one branch. The roots go deeper than you'll ever reach. We are everywhere. And by the time you uncover us, it'll be too late." The words sent a chill down my spine. Not because they were a threat, but because they sounded like the truth. Agent Walsh moved fast. "Detain them." "All!" she barked, her team swarming, weapons drawn, the air filled with shouting, the metallic click of cuffs, the stomp of boots. Veronica struggled, spitting venom at anyone who came close, her threats spilling like broken glass. "You can't stop me. You can't stop us. This family will lose everything. You'll all lose everything." But over her shrieks came a steadier voice, one that silenced everything else. Mildred. She stepped forward, her flip phone raised high. "Not this family," she declared. "Not this neighborhood. Not anymore. We've been scared long enough. Tonight the truth comes out." The neighbors, silent, paralyzed for so long, suddenly erupted. Cheers, shouts, voices raised together, not in fear, but in defiance. For the first time, they weren't bystanders. They were witnesses. They were fighters. Sophia's eyes lit up. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging my sleeve. "They're not scared anymore. We're not alone." I kissed the top of her head, holding her tighter. "No, sweetheart. We never were." But even as I said it, even as Veronica was dragged toward a waiting FBI vehicle, her face twisted into something that made my blood run cold. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling. And then she mouthed 2 words, slow and deliberate, locking eyes, with me across the chaos, not over. The chill of those words sank deep. Because in my gut, I knew she was right. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Everyone thought it was over when Veronica was shoved into the back of the FBI SUV. Neighbors clapped, some even cheered, relieved to see her reign of terror shackled in steel, but I couldn't shake the image of her lips moving as the agents pulled her away. Not over. Those 2 words stuck like barbed wire in my mind. Special Agent Walsh must have felt it too. She didn't celebrate. She didn't even relax. Her sharp eyes stayed on the men in suits now cuffed and lined against the curb. She knew predators didn't smile unless they had another weapon waiting in the dark. Detective Chen hurried forward, clutching Bradley's manila folder like it was treasure. "Agent, you need to see this," she said, her voice breathless. "These aren't just property records, they're maps, schedules. It's systemic." Walsh opened the folder under the glare of porch lights and cruiser beams. Inside were spreadsheets, fake assessments, signatures that didn't belong to the people listed. At the bottom, taped to the inside cover, was a card with a single name printed in bold: the Consortium. The word spread through the crowd like a chill wind. Nobody said it above a whisper, but we all felt the weight of it. This wasn't just Veronica's scheme. She was a cog in something larger, darker. Sophia looked up at me, her small hand tightening around mine. "Daddy," she whispered, "is that the bad people who've been watching us?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Judge Blackstone took the folder from Walsh, his eyes narrowing as he flipped through the papers. "This isn't about landscaping fees," he said bitterly. "This is racketeering, predatory acquisition. They've been clearing neighborhoods, not houses." "Why?" I asked, though I feared the answer. The judge's voice dropped, low and grim. "Development, control. Entire communities wiped out for projects no one voted on, no one approved. Casino deals, luxury resorts, private ventures hidden behind HOA boards." He looked up, his silver hair catching the flashing lights. "This isn't property fraud. It's displacement." Walsh snapped her radio to life. "This is Walsh. Contact Denver HQ. Tell them it's bigger than we thought. We need a task force." But before her words could even finish, another voice cut through. The night. Jake Morrison, the live streamer, his phone still in his hand. "Folks," he whispered to his thousands of viewers, "they just confirmed what we've been suspecting. This isn't about one family's cabin. This is about communities across the state, maybe the country. The HOA scam was just the mask." The chat on his stream exploded, lines of text flying faster than he could read. People claiming their neighborhoods faced the same fees, the same threats, the same intimidation. The story was spreading faster than law enforcement could contain it. And that's when Veronica struck again. From the back of the FBI SUV, her laughter rang out, sharp, mocking. It cut through the noise like a siren. "You fools!" she screamed, slamming her cuffed fists against the glass. "Do you think you've stopped anything? You've exposed yourselves. Now they'll come for all of you. The judge, the agent, the detective, the veteran, the old woman, the little girl. You've painted targets on your backs. And when they come, no badge, no robe, no camera will save you." The neighborhood fell silent. Even the agents hesitated. Walsh slammed the SUV door shut, but the echo of Veronica's words lingered. "Now they'll come for all of you," Mildred stepped forward, unshaken. She raised her flip phone like a sword. "Let them come," she said firmly. "We've got the truth, and the truth is stronger than fear." Sophia looked up at her, eyes wide. "Mrs. Mildred," she whispered, "are you scared?" Mildred smiled softly, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "Of course, sweetheart. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about standing anyway." Her words settled over me like an anchor in a storm. But the storm was far from over, because just then, Agent Walsh's radio crackled with an urgent voice from command. "Walsh, this is HQ. We've intercepted chatter. Multiple targets en route to your location. Armed. Estimated arrival, 10 minutes. Secure all civilians immediately." The color drained from Walsh's face. She turned sharply. "We're not done here. Everyone inside. Now. Move." Neighbors scrambled. Families ducked into houses, slamming doors, pulling curtains. Agents tightened their formation, weapons raised, eyes on the darkened road at the end of the cul-de-sac. Sophia pressed. Closer against me, her teddy bear crushed between us. "Daddy," she whispered, "are the bad people really coming?" I bent down, kissed her hair, whispering into the crown of her head. "Yes," I said honestly, "but they don't know who they're up against." Judge Blackstone placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his voice low, steady, the same voice that had sentenced criminals in countless courtrooms. "Ethan, we've fought bigger battles than this. We'll protect her, whatever it takes." But in his eyes I saw it, the flicker of fear he didn't want anyone else to notice. Because this wasn't a courtroom anymore. This was a battlefield. Walsh barked final orders, her voice sharp as glass. "Secure the evidence! Protect the child! Hold the line until backup arrives!" Detective Chen stood at her side, her jaw set, her gun steady. "If they want this neighborhood, they'll have to go through us." The street was quiet again. Too quiet. Even the night animals seemed to have vanished. Every second ticked like thunder in my chest. And then, far down the road, the first set of headlights appeared. Not one car, not two. Convoy. Dozens of vehicles, engines low, moving together like a dark tide rolling straight for us. Sophia's small voice trembled, just loud enough for me to hear. "Daddy, are we going to lose our home?" I held her tighter, staring into the headlights that grew larger with every heartbeat. My jaw clenched. My pulse thundered. "No," I whispered. "Not tonight." But deep down, I knew the next few minutes would decide everything. The headlights swallowed the road, dozens of them, stretching like a serpent through the night, moving slow and deliberate, engines growling low enough to make the ground vibrate. Windows tinted black, vehicles too polished, too uniform to be anything but organized muscle. The neighbors who hadn't fled ducked behind fences and blinds, peeking with wide eyes. Phones trembled in their hands as they live-streamed history, terrified but unable to look away. The viewer count on Jake Morrison's stream soared into the hundreds of thousands. The entire country was about to see a battle no one had believed could happen in a quiet mountain neighborhood. And there we stood, an FBI team, a judge, a detective, a handful of civilians, between my daughter and the shadow network that had marked us as prey. Special Agent Walsh planted her feet in the center of the street, weapon raised, jaw locked. "Hold your ground!" she barked, her voice cutting through the roar. Her agents fanned out, weapons trained, nerves taut. Judge Blackstone stepped beside her, towering in the flashing red-blue of patrol cars. He wasn't armed, but his voice was iron. "This is federal ground now. Anyone who advances will be held accountable in my courtroom, or worse." Detective Chen slid into position next to them, her gun steady, her eyes sharper than ever. "Let them come," she muttered. Crouched lower, clutching Sophia against me, whispering so only she could hear. "Close your eyes, sweetheart. No matter what happens, don't let go of Daddy. But Sophia, she didn't close her eyes. She lifted her head, teddy bear clutched tight, and stared straight into the storm. The convoy slowed, then stopped. For a heartbeat, the neighborhood was silent except for the idling growl of engines. And then, the doors opened. Dozens of figures stepped out, dressed sharp as executives but moving with the coordination of soldiers. Their leader emerged last, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence radiating command. No badge, no uniform, just authority worn like a weapon. He looked around slowly, his voice deep and smooth. Well, this is quite the gathering. His gaze landed on Veronica, still locked in the SUV, her face pressed to the glass, smiling like a devil. Then he turned to us. You've caused quite a mess. Walsh's weapon never wavered. This is a federal operation. You are interfering with an active investigation. Stand down immediately. The man chuckled, low and amused. Investigation? Into what? Property disputes? Elderly fees? That's cute. His smile vanished. You don't understand what you've stumbled into. We are the consortium, and we don't lose to families with teddy bears and live streams. His words rippled through the crowd. The name, the same one printed in Bradley's folder, now had a face. Sophia's voice, small but steady, pierced the silence. My great-grandpa said houses are made of wood and stone, but homes are made of love and memories. You can't take love away. The man's smile faltered. For just a flicker, something human cracked through, but it was gone in an instant. He lifted a hand. People moved forward. Chaos ignited, FBI agents shouted, weapons snapping into position. The consortium's enforcers advanced in unison, their presence suffocating, a tide of control ready to swallow us whole. But then, another sound split the night. Sirens, louder this time. From the opposite end of the street, an entire wall of state patrol cars, unmarked vehicles, even armored vans roared into view. Lights blazing, doors slamming, agents pouring out, weapons trained. Agent Walsh's radio crackled with the words we all needed. Task force deployed. You're not alone. For the first time, the consortium leader's mask cracked. His calm melted into fury as he realized his element of surprise was gone. Cameras caught every angle, live streams broadcasting his face to the world. Walsh raised her voice like a battle cry. This ends here! The street erupted, agents flooding forward, neighbors shouting from porches, lights blazing against the dark tide. The consortium men faltered under the weight of sheer numbers and exposure. Some raised hands. Others tried to flee, only to be dragged down by federal teams. Veronica shrieked from inside the SUV, thrashing against her restraints. No, you promised me! You said I'd never fall! Her screams were drowned by the chaos, her empire collapsing around her, and in the center of it all, Judge Blackstone stood like a pillar, his voice booming over the storm. The law is here, justice is here, and you will not take this family. The battle didn't last long. When predators lose their shadows, when the world sees them for what they are, their strength evaporates. Within minutes, the convoy was dismantled. Men in suits cuffed and lined up against cars, phones, files, evidence seized. The consortium, leader, finally restrained, glared at Walsh as he was dragged away. You can arrest me, but you'll never kill the roots. We're everywhere. Walsh's response was steady, cold. Then we'll cut every root we find. And just like that, the storm passed. Neighbors emerged slowly from their homes, blinking into the flashing lights, realizing the nightmare was finally over. Phones lowered, live streams ended. But the story, the truth, was already out. Sophia tugged on my sleeve, her eyes wide but calm. Daddy, she whispered, is the bad lady going to jail now? I crouched down, brushing her hair back. Yes, sweetheart. for a very long time. Her small face brightened, relief flooding through. Her. She lifted her teddy bear high and announced to the entire crowd, her voice clear and triumphant, "Bad lady, go bye-bye." The neighbors laughed, some clapping, others crying. Even the agents allowed a smile. For in that one simple declaration, the weight lifted. Judge Blackstone knelt, pulling Sophia into his arms. "You were the bravest of us all tonight," whispered. "Your mother and great-grandfather would be so proud." Sophia hugged him tight, her small voice muffled against his shoulder. "I wasn't scared, Grandpa Judge. Not when you were here. Not when Daddy was here. Not when everybody stood together." The judge's eyes softened, moisture glinting in the corners. "That's the lesson, my girl. Bullies only win when we're alone. But when we stand together, when we refuse to bow, justice will always find its way." As the last of the consortium was loaded into vans, Agent Walsh approached, her expression equal parts exhaustion and resolve. "This isn't over," she admitted, "but tonight was a turning point. People saw. They'll fight now. Because of you." I looked around, at the neighbors who had once watched from behind curtains but now stood together, at Mildred still holding her little flip phone high like a badge of honor, at Jake broadcasting the truth to thousands, and at my daughter, safe. In my arms, her innocence scarred, but her courage shining brighter than ever. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Because this wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about a community that chose courage over fear, truth over lies, love over power, and as the night settled, one truth echoed in my chest. Bullies always fall, and sometimes it takes an 8-year-old to remind us all why we stand. You've heard this confession. Now wait until you hear the next one.